I think there's some credence to this third party, or eliminating the parties actually possibly going to happen, because I think a lot of faith was lost for blue and red, based on the candidates that were chosen and stuff. I think a lot of faith got lost. I
That's
mean,
true.
how it's being spun, like they're saying like everything that is being said in the White House right now is not true, and then there's just bad policies, crime bills, stuff like that. A lot of stuff negatives now from both sides. I think there's some credence to the fact that there will be some kind of changeover, but I just hope it's really not socialism. That
Look at
like
that. Shawn
concrete
Shawn is
socialism.
waking up. That's major progress that you actually see that Trump's been repulsive to so many before. You couldn't even understand why. It's good that you're finally starting to see it for what it is. That's impressive. I think that's a big moment, you know what I
Don't
mean?
don't get me wrong.
I think
I
it's a
do
really
think
big moment.
that
He's been on
I
here
do
11
think that
episodes like Trump was his hero. And
no, I do think that there's a reality of what happened, like real life,
man,
that
Shawn
needs
is
to
in
be
the zone
addressed.
tonight. Like, what did they slip into Shawn's drink? Shawn is on fire tonight. Only one bad joke. He's making a lot of good points, sounding like a smart person. Shawn is
No,
bringing the heat this evening.
I think that there's a reality to what's going on. I think that there was a lot of stuff that needs to be investigated of what happened in the election, but I think that a record number of people turned out for Joe Biden, so that's an indicator of um what that America did feel let down by Trump. But I think that the reason they felt that way is because of the mainstream media. I don't think they felt that way because of his actual actions. So that's what I'm
But
saying.
you
I think
did,
that
and
they
that's all
needed.
that's important. You saw it. So I mean, it doesn't matter what the crazy complete, as long as his logical supporters saw it, it doesn't really matter what his completely brain dead supporters think, because all that really matters is the supporters like you. Like there's no changing the minds of, it's just like the extreme left. There's no changing the minds of the people extremely on one side, you know what I mean?
I
But it is.
do think that they need to investigate and make sure that the elections are ran fairly. So even if Biden did win in the legitimate vote, that it's counted the right way, so that you see the actual numbers that happen, not what's being reported, which is like
Of course.
they're saying, oh, we investigated and we found 3,000 cases of people being deceased in voting, and the mainstream media just turns around and says that didn't even happen. That's really scary that that's going on. They need to revamp that. They need to make the news honest again.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I had a point, but then I lost it. I don't know if it was a very good one or not.
Might have actually
Oh yeah,
legitimately.
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's fine for Trump to seek the recounts and do all of this behind the scenes. It's actually way more normal than you think. It's actually what most people do when they're losing an election. But you understand the harm now to him behaving how he's been behaving through this whole process, right? Because it's like we're trying to move to where it's a real democracy, and then this is just making everybody think that there's no way a real democracy can work, because it's making a lot of people question if they're legitimate or not. So it's like it
It's
just doesn't
harmful
make
if it turns
headlines
out
because
that
they
he
don't
was
act like a
wrong.
big baby. You know what I mean?
It's harmful if it turns out that he was wrong. If he was incorrect in every element, which is what the courts are starting to say now. The courts,
Oh,
not
it's
the
harmful
news.
either way now that he's behaved how he's behaved. Like that's what I'm saying. It's kind of a lose lose now, and it's gonna change the way people perceive. Well, it's not a full lose lose because it's probably how I come to power. Like I kind of needed everybody to see that both sides are all just a sham, and that the whole thing is just a complete fucking joke. So I mean, it's kind of a good thing when you break it down, because that's how incredible leaders like Atari Monroe like emerge in history and world history. You know what I mean? So it's fine. The cult of love is building. You know what I mean? If you want to join cult of love, just hit my line. At Atari Monroe wherever you're at.
I don't know how much of that you're saying with like this is 100% the plan or whatever, with
This is
the
100%
naming
the
and
plan.
everything, but so because you may call it something else or whatever, like whatever, or somebody else may get the same idea and do the same thing, but I think something like that needs to happen. They need to eliminate the party system, which I think was the goal of what they were doing. in a Trump presidency, and then we've done some research, and I've seen Gabbard, and it looks like that's similar to what her goal is eliminating a two-party system. And I think that that's the best thing for the country is to eliminate that, because it's not how it started. It started out as just Federalist or Whig Party, and that's what everybody was. And it just slowly divided and divided and divided until it broke into these two different parties. And aspects like slavery divided it up, abortion divided it up, gay marriage divided it up, just real big issues like that divided up the people into those two different parties. And they need to take that divisiveness out of it. That's really unhealthy and hard
Yeah,
to.
the people kind of did it, but it's fell out of the people's hands. Now it's just in the elite people that have their money tied into the two major parties' hands. Like, it's the system isn't even what anybody wanted it to be on any side. You know what I mean?
Well, if they abolish the two-party system, I feel like you'd have to start from the ground up, because we know who are Republicans now, we know who are Democrats now. So I think those beefs would still be there if these people are still in politics.
So start with completely new candidates.
Yeah, I don't
Right.
know.
It can't just be president. You have to get nonpartisans throughout all the fucking ranks to break down the system. You know what I mean? Like, and like you said, it could be anybody, but what I'm trying to do, starting in Nevada and Arizona and then stem out, is exactly get independence. It doesn't necessarily have to be multiple parties. It should just be no parties where you're voting on the person's platforms. So then everything comes together and mirrors America, because a party can't have certain pull. So if you're in Detroit and it's like this candidate's perfect for Detroit, he's not going to get fucked because he's an independent. He'll be able to just get right in because it's always independent. So you have to take over like whole states, to where like it would be a slow like seeding out process, unless, like you said, right away other people just were like, oh, this is a great idea, I'm going to start trying to implement this in my city. And then you just have to have a bunch of people start running and shit like that. You know what I mean? The same way
You
that
have to
the
start at the
Republicans and
local
Democrats.
level and slowly work your way up.
Right, like the same way the Republicans and Democrats like create these candidates and then work them up through the ranks. You know what I mean? We'd have to be like building our own candidates and encouraging other intelligent people to jump in, you know what I mean, and run for offices and shit. Like influential, smart people, like, and not run as a major party. Like that's the key issue. And yeah, once you start getting them in, it would start stemming across state to state, and eventually they'd start losing the power. And if everybody's independent, then who has the power? The fucking voters. Like it was designed to be to begin with.
People make fun of Kanye, but he joined at like the last second, wasn't even on the ballot in a lot of states, and got what, 50,000 votes.
Yeah,
So
certain states he got almost like 2-3%. Like certain states he did really good, like cleaned up a shit
I
ton of
think he
votes.
did close to 1 million, but I don't quote me on that. I think he did though. I know Joe Jorgensen did like 2 million.
He did like a 1% in New York, I think, and yeah, he beat Jorgensen in some places.
yeah.
Kanye beat Jorgensen in like 2-3 states. So yeah, I mean that alone shows that if there were a whole bunch of like very influential people, you know what I mean, that people thought had leader qualities, you could easily push it out. People just simply need to stop running as these candidates. And that's why when Shawn has tried to say that he thought Donald Trump, that was kind of his design, I can't agree with that, because Donald Trump had the money and the status to run as an independent, but he chose to run as one of the major parties. So it's like he chose to get himself involved in that system. So I don't really mind publicly being like a non-supporter or being against him, because it's not something he was forced into. He chose to be one of the major two parties. So it's like that I lose any respect I have for him right there out the gate if what he's supposedly standing for is to being against the establishment. Well, then why did you join the establishment, stupid ass? You know what I mean? Like, use all your money and just get in as an independent, and it
But
would be monumental,
I don't
like.
think in 2016 with Hillary Clinton and coming just off of an Obama presidency, I don't think you could have went in without being one of the two parties and made any type of difference. Because I don't think you could
Honestly,
have
if
got
Hillary
elected.
was the opponent, that would have been the best year to do it. If he got to a point where they had to let him on the major stage, And think about how he is and how he uses his money in Twitter and shit like that. He would make sure he gets on the final stage. So in a scenario like that, it would be Donald Trump and Hillary and a Republican, because he wouldn't have been. So it would have been a three-person. When it came down to the finals, it would have been a three-person. Just like if Joe Jorgensen was projected to get as many electoral votes as those people, then she would have been on stage. You know what I mean? They have to put every party that has a realistic candidate on stage.
I think what would have happened if he had ran third party is the same thing that happened with Kanye running third party. Because Kanye ran third party.
If Donald Trump did it and he did it from the start and started brewing it a couple years ahead of time, like he basically did anyway, no, it wouldn't have gone how Kanye did. Kanye has no history of doing business
if
things.
Kanye runs again. If Kanye runs again in 2024 as an independent, we'll see, because if he gets a big percentage of the vote, then that'll change my mind. That Donald Trump was trying to eliminate it with the alternate game plan, just a different mindset. But because I think that's definitely Kanye's goal, that seems like his goal with not running as a Democrat or Republican, with siding with Trump on certain stuff, with endorsing Democratic candidate. A lot of the stuff he's doing doesn't seem traditional. So I think he's on a similar mindset, but I just think if he runs third party again, he'll get wiped out. So I think you'll see him run either as a Republican or Democrat in order to actually get elected. I think you have to at this point. Maybe it may not be that way soon because people are losing faith in both parties. As it stands, people are really divided along these party lines. So it's like radically one way and the other. People are set in their ways and stuff, so they're not gonna, like, a lot of Republican people aren't gonna vote for anybody except for a Republican. A lot of Democrat people aren't gonna vote for anybody except for a Democrat. Enough numbers that's how you win elections. You'd have to be really, you really have to be something for you to win over the vote.
People are only divided down a party line because that's what they think is the only option, and Kanye showed a lot of people that those weren't the only options. So I think
he proved a lot this last year. Like I said, he definitely showed that you can make a major push. And once it got to the point, which could already be the next election, when it's at a point where people see that it's a real option, they'll get way more votes, because people have been trained to think like that non-Republican or Democrat votes are wasted votes. But once they see firsthand that they're not wasted votes, then the shift will be very obvious. You know what I mean? Like when you start seeing the election numbers come through.
I don't know. I have a conviction in my heart, on my faith or whatever, that Trump was part of God's plan. So maybe that's what it was. Because I don't think he's going to go past this 4-year term. I think he's done here. No matter, because I think the courts and mainstream media and everybody's against him. So I do think Joe Biden will take over as president next. But I do think that his presidency is going to be pretty trash and really set the way for somebody like Kanye, who just had his big switch to Christianity and doing the Sunday services and talking more like a sane person. I think that it'll open the way for somebody like Kanye to come in and actually make a lot of change. And I think that the Donald Trump presidency had to happen. So whether or not it was a negative or a positive, I think that it was all within the overall scope of getting things to being on a better approach. Because even if Donald Trump in the end, it turns out, was just very terrible and the worst thing that ever happened, if you look back at the economy and the economy wasn't as good as it looked, or if you look at different factors and stuff and Trump just was terrible, even if that's the case, I do think that it put people in a state to where they're ready for change.
Oh yeah, his whole run is definitely prevalent, you know, and puts a whole different swing into the system. I mean, that's true either way. Yeah. I don't think he's sent from God or anything, but I mean, yeah, he definitely created a shift. Yeah, that's for sure.